The Cokeville Elementary School hostage crisis occurred on Friday, May 16, 1986, in Cokeville, Wyoming, United States, when former Town Marshal David Young, 43, and his wife Doris Young, 47, took 154 hostages, 136 children and 18 adults, at Cokeville Elementary School. Armed with 10 firearms and an improvised gasoline bomb, the couple entered the school and corralled students and faculty into a single classroom, demanding ransom. David had the bomb trigger tied to his wrist and threatened to detonate the device at any moment. After a 2.5-hour standoff, David became increasingly agitated and decided to leave the room, transferring the trigger string to his wife Doris' wrist. Eventually, Doris inadvertently lifted her arm, causing the bomb to detonate prematurely. Upon returning to the scene, David fatally shot his wife, wounded a teacher, and then committed suicide. Although all the hostages survived, 79 were later hospitalized with burns and injuries, the majority of which were severe. Background: David Young served as the only police officer in Cokeville for 6 months in 1979. After being fired for misconduct, he relocated to Tucson, Arizona, where he married Doris Young. Both David and Doris had affiliations with white supremacist groups, including the Posse Comitatus and the Aryan Nations. Before the hostage crisis, David had tested a similar bomb on a sealed school bus in Arizona, destroying it. On May 16, 1986, David and Doris returned to Cokeville. At around 1 p.m., they arrived at Cokeville Elementary School with a gasoline bomb, 5 rifles, and 5 handguns. The motive behind their actions was not straightforward revenge for David's firing, but rather a twisted ideology. David's journal entries suggested he sought to impose his vision of a brave new world on intelligent children, influenced by Cokeville's above-average education scores. He saw potential in the community's close-knit nature and wrote, "Threaten one, and all are at your mercy." David distributed a manifesto titled, "Zero equals Infinity," and declared, "This is a revolution." Teachers were confused by his incoherent manifesto. Meanwhile, Doris went from classroom to classroom, enticing 136 children, 6 faculty members, 9 teachers, and 3 other adults, including a job applicant and a UPS driver, into a first-grade classroom, totaling 154 hostages. She used various excuses such as an emergency, a surprise, or an assembly to gather them. David Young initially planned to involve longtime friends Gerald Deppy and Doyle Mendenhall, who had invested in a get-rich-quick scheme he called the Biggie. However, both men ultimately refused to participate and were restrained in a van outside the school. David's youngest daughter from his first marriage, Princess, accompanied David and Doris to the school, but chose not to participate and instead went to report the incident at the town hall. Princess, Deppy, and Mendenhall were never charged due to their refusal to take part in the crime. Bomb anatomy. The bomb was an improvised explosive device constructed in a small 2-wheeled shopping cart with 2 stacked baskets. The top basket contained a gallon milk jug of gasoline, wired with a blasting cap. Below the jug in the bottom basket were 2 tuna fish cans filled with a mixture of aluminum powder and flour intended to aerosolize and deflagrate upon detonation, each can with its own blasting cap. Chain links, gunpowder, and ammunition boxes were distributed throughout both baskets to act as shrapnel. The bomb was designed with a dead man's switch, consisting of a wooden piece separating 2 metal connectors within the jaws of a clothespin, forming an incomplete circuit. The circuit was powered by a 9-volt lantern battery. Removing the wooden piece completed the circuit and triggered the explosion. This wooden piece was tied to Doris' wrist by a string. A pinhole-sized leak at the bottom of the gasoline jug allowed gasoline to drip into the tuna fish cans, turning the aluminum flour mixture into paste and preventing aerosolization. The gasoline fumes led teachers to open classroom windows, inadvertently creating vents for the explosion. 2 of the 3 blasting caps failed to detonate, as the wires to each tuna can had been reportedly cut. The blasting cap in the gasoline jug functioned properly, initiating the explosion. The reason for the wire cuts remains unexplained. Standoff. In the classroom, David Young held the gasoline bomb, with the triggering mechanism attached to a string tied around his wrist. He demanded a ransom of $2 million per hostage, totaling $308 million, equivalent to $856 million in 2023, and requested an audience with President Ronald Reagan. David had also sent a copy of the manifesto to Reagan. With permission, the teachers brought in books, art supplies, and a television to help keep the children occupied. Meanwhile, police and parents gathered out of sight of the classroom where the hostages were held. Doris Young attempted to calm the children by suggesting they think of it as an adventure movie, or that they would have a great story to tell their grandchildren. Many children displayed signs of distress, such as sobbing, complaining of headaches from the gasoline fumes, or expressing a desire to go home. One child had a birthday that day, and songs were sung in his honor, with the hostage-takers joining in. Despite this effort, the mood remained somber, and teachers negotiated to bring additional items from the library to help distract the children and pass the time. Windows were opened to disperse the gasoline fumes, and small group prayers were offered among the children. Throughout the standoff, David grew increasingly agitated and irritable. To manage his agitation, the teachers created an approximately 8-foot square of masking tape to define his personal space. We could tell that he was becoming very nervous. As I sat there and watched him, I could feel he was becoming agitated. He had big rings of perspiration. I was frightened and felt that we needed to do something to try to calm him down or to be cautious because he was so agitated. So we decided to use some masking tape to mark an 8-foot square in the middle of the room. David pushed the cart with the homemade bomb into this area, and we told the children that this was the magic square. They should not cross it. Some of the children sat around and watched him, which I'm sure made him even more nervous. Carol Peterson, 2nd grade teacher. Bombing and death of the perpetrators. Approximately 2.5 hours into the standoff, David transferred the triggering mechanism of the bomb to Doris' wrist and went to a small bathroom that connected the 1st and 2nd grade classrooms. Doris, affected by the gasoline fumes, raised her hand to her forehead, inadvertently activating the triggering mechanism. The bomb exploded, severely injuring Doris and filling the room with black smoke and pockets of fire. Immediately following the explosion, teachers began pushing children into the hallway and out through 2 open windows onto the grass outside. This caused chaos as panicked parents attempted to breach police lines. The subsequent police report indicates that David emerged from the connecting bathroom, shot his injured wife in the head, and killed her. He then shot John Miller, a music teacher who was trying to escape, and subsequently took his own life with a .45 pistol. During the commotion, Doris' burnt body was expelled through a window and left on the front lawn. When the bomb detonated, the force was significantly mitigated by loose ceiling tiles, which absorbed much of the explosion's energy. The open windows also acted as vents, reducing the explosive impact. You could see that the roof tiles had been lifted out of their brackets. I don't think David planned for the ceiling tiles in the school. In the bus, everything was solid, but with the ceiling tiles and open windows in the school, a lot of the explosion's force was absorbed or dispersed. Aftermath. Of the 154 hostages, 79 were treated for non-fatal injuries, primarily second-degree burns and smoke inhalation. The injured were triaged to several hospitals in Wyoming, Idaho, and Utah. Media. The incident was detailed in the book The Cokeville Miracle, When Angels Intervene by Hart Wixom and his wife Judine, published by Cedar Fort Incorporated. This book served as the basis for a CBS made-for-TV movie titled To Save the Children. In 2006, the Cokeville Miracle Foundation published a book of recollections about the day from parents, emergency workers, and former hostages. The story was also featured on Unsolved Mysteries, Unexplained Mysteries, and I Survived. A movie about the incident, The Cokeville Miracle, was produced by filmmaker T.C. Christensen and released on June 5, 2015.